The autumn sun hung low over the rolling hills of Montana as 43-year-old Jacob Williams drove his pickup truck down the dusty road toward the Henderson farm. His weathered hands gripped the steering wheel as he contemplated the simple transaction ahead, purchasing a dairy cow to add to his small herd. Jacob had been managing his ranch alone for 3 years now, ever since his wife passed away from cancer, and the daily routines of cattle care provided some comfort against the persistent loneliness that had settled over his life like morning fog. Jacob's ranch was modest but well-maintained, a testament to his belief that honest work and attention to detail could create something meaningful even in solitude. His graying beard and the lines around his blue eyes spoke of years spent outdoors, but it was the quiet sadness in his expression that revealed the depth of his isolation. When Jacob pulled up to the Henderson property, he immediately noticed that something seemed amiss. The farmhouse, which had always been meticulously maintained, showed signs of neglect. Paint was peeling from the shutters, the garden was overgrown, and several pieces of farm equipment sat idle in the yard. As Jacob approached the front porch, he was greeted by Tom Henderson, a man he had known casually for nearly a decade, through cattle auctions and community events. Tom appeared to have aged considerably since Jacob had last seen him, his face drawn with worry and exhaustion. "Jacob, thank you for coming out," Tom said, extending his hand with obvious effort to maintain normal social courtesies. "I appreciate you taking the cow off our hands. We really need to reduce our herd size right now." "No problem at all, Tom," Jacob replied, noting the strain in his neighbor's voice. "How is everything going here? You look like you have been dealing with some challenges." Tom's expression grew more troubled. "It has been a difficult year, Jacob. My wife Helen has been very sick, and the medical bills have been overwhelming. We are having to sell off most of our livestock just to keep up with expenses." Jacob felt his chest tighten with sympathy and recognition. He remembered all too well the financial and emotional pressures that came with watching a spouse battle serious illness. "I am sorry to hear about Helen," Jacob said sincerely. "Is there anything I can do to help beyond purchasing the cow?" Before Tom could respond, a small voice interrupted their conversation. "Daddy, is this the man who is going to take Bessie away?" Jacob turned to see a little girl who appeared to be about 7 years old, with long brown hair and serious hazel eyes. She wore a simple cotton dress that showed signs of careful mending, and she clutched a worn stuffed rabbit against her chest. "This is my daughter Emma," Tom said, placing a protective hand on the girl's shoulder. "Emma, this is Mr. Williams. He's going to give Bessie a good home on his ranch." Emma looked up at Jacob with the direct gaze that only children possess. "Are you going to take good care of her? She gets scared when she is away from the other cows." "I promise I will take very good care of her," Jacob replied, kneeling down to Emma's eye level. "She will have plenty of other cows to keep her company and green pastures to graze in." Emma nodded solemnly, then moved closer to Jacob and whispered in a small, urgent voice that Tom could not hear. "We have to sell Bessie because it is my mommy's last day alive and Daddy needs money for the funeral." Jacob felt as though the ground had shifted beneath him. The innocent, matter-of-fact way Emma delivered this devastating information hit him with the force of a physical blow. He looked up at Tom, who was staring off toward the barn with obvious emotional struggle. "Emma, honey," Jacob said gently, "what do you mean about your mommy?" "The doctor came yesterday and told Daddy that Mommy only has today left," Emma explained with the heartbreaking clarity that children sometimes possess about situations adults can barely comprehend. "Daddy has been crying a lot, and he said we have to sell everything valuable so Mommy can have a pretty funeral." Jacob stood slowly, his mind racing as he processed the full scope of the Henderson family's crisis. This was not simply about financial hardship or medical bills, but about a family facing the immediate loss of their mother and wife. "Tom," Jacob said quietly, approaching his neighbor with newfound understanding. "Emma just told me about Helen's condition. I had no idea things were so serious." Tom's composure finally cracked, and tears began streaming down his face. "The doctors say she has hours, not days. We are trying to make her as comfortable as possible, but I do not know how I am going to manage a funeral and keep the farm running and take care of Emma all at the same time." Jacob made a decision that felt both spontaneous and completely inevitable. "Tom, forget about selling the cow. I want to help your family in a different way." Jacob, I appreciate the thought, but we really need the money from the sale, Tom replied, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. You are going to have the money, Jacob said firmly, but you are also going to keep Bessie. I am going to pay for the cow and leave her here with you. Additionally, I want to cover Helen's funeral expenses and help with whatever other immediate needs your family has. Tom stared at Jacob in complete shock. I cannot accept that kind of help, it is too much. Emma tugged on Jacob's sleeve, looking up at him with wonder. Are you like an angel that Mommy told me about? She said angels help people when things are really scary. Jacob felt his throat tighten with emotion. I am not an angel, Emma. I am just someone who understands what your family is going through. And I want to help because I believe that is what neighbors should do for each other. Over the next 24 hours, Jacob coordinated with other community members to provide comprehensive support for the Henderson family. He arranged for meals to be delivered daily, organized help with farm chores, and ensured that Helen's funeral would be dignified and beautiful without creating financial burden. More importantly, Jacob found himself drawn into Emma's life in ways he had not expected. The little girl reminded him of the daughter he and his wife had never been able to have, and her courage in the face of unimaginable loss awakened protective instincts he had thought were buried with his own grief. 6 months later, as Jacob watched Emma help him feed the cattle on his ranch during one of her regular visits, he reflected on how a simple cow purchase had evolved into something much more meaningful. Tom had gradually recovered from his grief enough to manage his farm with Jacob's ongoing support, and Emma had become the daughter Jacob had always wished for. The relationship had developed naturally, with Emma spending weekends at Jacob's ranch while Tom worked to rebuild his life. Jacob helped Emma with homework, taught her about animal care, and provided the stable male presence she needed during her own healing process. When Tom eventually asked Jacob to become Emma's legal guardian, should anything happen to him, it felt like the formalization of a family bond that had grown organically from mutual care and support. Jacob had learned that sometimes the most important purchases we make are not the ones we planned, but the commitments we choose to make when we encounter people who need our help. And Emma had discovered that families can be created not just through birth, but through the willingness of caring adults to step forward during life's most difficult moments and offer love without conditions or expectations.